Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me in another episode of The Art of Comic Writing. I'm your host, Jorge Medina. That's George with a J. And before we get to it, I'm going to ask you, you know what I'm going to ask you? I'm going to ask you to subscribe. I'm going to ask you to like. And even more importantly, share this video. Share it out. If you have a friend who wants to write a comic book, has no idea how to go about it, or doesn't know what they should be doing, who they should be talking to, come here, check this out, check out the show, share the video with them. Now, it is time to thank the sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends at Gig. Do you have the next best-selling comic book idea but have no idea how to get started because you're an artist and not a writer, or vice versa? Then go to globalindiegroup.com and find exactly what you're looking for. Gig has a list of writers, artists, editors, colorists, letterers, even podcasts on the platform to help you bring that comic book to life. Sign up today to get started and make sure you provide the promo code WRITING at checkout for a discount. What are you waiting for? Go to globalindiegroup.com today and get started on that next best-selling comic book you've been wanting to create. A funny thing happens when you decide to embark on the indie publishing or indie comic book producing train. Actually, a few things happen. I won't go into how many because I'd be here all day, but there are some funny things that happen. For one, you realize how hard making funny books is, and I guess there's nothing really funny about that. But the other, and the one I like to focus on, is the many interesting characters you meet. Not just the characters you write, but the people you meet. And some of those characters start out as strangers, trying to do the same thing you're doing, and then some actually become some of your best friends. My guest this week has become that kind of a friend to me, and we have been through a lot on this journey. And we have collaborated with a lot of other characters in this industry. We've even done a collab in a short story for an anthology ourselves. So I thought it would be a good idea to have him on and ask him about the indie collaborations and do they work? Plus, we're going to be giving him a writing prompt as a parting gift, like I like to do on the show. And without further ado, please welcome a person I have known for almost 20 years. He's a hell of an artist and storyteller who also happens to write. He's got a whole lot of indie projects under his belt. He's published a children's book called Little Steve's Closet. But more importantly, he's a hell of a father, husband, and friend. Please welcome Mr. Anibal Arroyo.
Hey, what up, man? I gotta say that's the single best intro I've ever had, bro. I'm honored.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, man. I'm trying. I got to give you that Jay Leno, entrance opening. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
don't know if I can live up to that now. Now there's pressure.
Yeah, man. Now listen, we're gonna have a good time. The reason, for those watching, the reason why I put this show together was because, and this is funny because you're actually you're an artist who writes, I think, rather than
Right.
say anything else.
Yeah.
So normally, I have writers on the show. We talk about writing, but you are a storyteller, man. Like, you tell stories through your art, and you dabbled in some writing. You've done some writing. You know what I mean? So I figured let's get this from the perspective of an artist who writes. So I'm going to ask you obviously a few questions. At the end of the questions, we're going to have a little writing prompt, which I'm going to give to you. You don't know what it is yet, and so we'll do that. But why don't we start? Why don't we start with the first question, Anibal? Let's get cracking.
Let's get into it.
All right. So we all have a process, whether you're a writer, artist, whatever it is. Everybody's got a creative process in which they sit down and do their thing. What is the most difficult part of your artistic process?
All right. See, with that question, I really I gave it a lot of thought because there's so many different aspects that I consider difficult when I'm creating something. Okay. I'm going to answer it from the point of view of when I'm creating something for myself, because when I'm creating something with someone else or for someone else, that's a whole new set of problems. Okay. So I'm just going to leave that one. Yeah. We're only going to focus on creating and my process when I'm doing stuff for
For
myself.
you, yes. Okay, good.
I would say for me, even though the heavy lifting, the physical labor is the actual drawing, to me, the part that takes the most out of me and that drains me the most and takes the most concentration and focus is the thought process. Okay.
Mm.
The thinking of how are you going to piece this together? How is this going to end? How is this going to make sense? Did I miss something here to connect this to that? Are people going to understand what I'm trying to say the way that I have it? It's not even necessarily the writing part of it. It's just the figuring out the thought process of it. That to me is the hardest part when I'm
Yeah.
creating something.
This is almost like a puzzle, and
Yeah.
you're figuring it out. Like you
Yeah.
have the story in your head,
Right.
and now you kind of have to put the pieces
Yeah.
where they belong.
Right.
And I think that the hardest, and you're right, I agree with you. I mean, so that's not just hard, but it's also time consuming because you're right. There are so many things that can go wrong during that part of the process. Because if you leave a plot hole
Yeah.
and you continue your story with that plot hole there, and you didn't realize it was there, it could debacle the whole thing. The whole thing could go to nothing just because of that one thing. I think that's why I think editing is so important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we can't see sometimes everything that we're doing. We're too far into the woods to see the
Yeah.
trees. You know what I mean?
And I'll even say, George, I think it could also be, and we've had this conversation before. A lot of the issues and a lot of things and our points of view can be also personality driven. I'm not
Mm,
gonna say I'm a control freak, but I definitely like to have things the way I like to have them. And if they're not the way I like to have them, I'm rattling my head until I get them that way. You know what I mean? I
right,
don't even
right.
want to say perfectionist because I know I leave a lot of stuff like, nobody's gonna notice. I'll do that if I can get away with it. But for the most part, if I can get in there and say, okay, I've covered all of this, no one can go in there and pick apart what I just took a month
Mm.
to do in 2 seconds because I covered that 2 seconds. I got to
Right,
answer for that.
right,
And
right.
until I feel that way that I've covered that and I don't see any more obvious holes like that, I can't let it rest. You know what I mean? So that
Gotcha.
to me, that's what makes it the hardest part. Because when I'm
Yeah.
drawing or when I'm writing, even you can look up a word on, whatever and find out a million different ways to say one word and it's there
Mhm,
for you, but the
mhm.
thought of how you're gonna put it together, the process, that the thought behind it, how it's gonna come together, makes sense for not only you, but for the people you want to look at it and to read it. That's where like that pains me. That definitely is the hardest for me.
So with your you have your process, and now you have this idea in your head, right? And you got to piece it all together. But before, I mean, when that idea comes, right?
Yeah.
What comes first for you? Is it the plot, the characters, and why do you think you lean towards one or the other, or maybe both? I mean, what is your
Okay.
what comes first?
For me, man, again, it's all about like the almost like the spontaneity of creativity, right? Like to me,
Mhm.
nothing is really uh creative when it becomes a formula or a recipe and you're just following these steps to make something. Okay,
I
are you
see.
creating a cake when you read the recipe and you're baking a cake? Not really. Technically, yeah, you could say I'm mixing and I'm going to create this cake, but that's not really creativity. That's not creating. So that's my thought pattern. So when I come into something, I rarely use the same, I guess, process, or if you want to call it that, for a story. Like sometimes the character comes first.
Right, right.
Sometimes the idea comes first. Like I hear a sentence that might spark a whole story from it. I hear a song.
Mm,
I see something. It comes from. There's no one way for me to tell you that this is how it works for me, and this is the way I always do it. That
right.
doesn't exist for me.
Gotcha, gotcha.
You know?
So it's not like, all right, well, I heard the name of a person, but what's the plot, right? Like
Right.
it's not like that for you. It's like,
Right.
oh snap, that's a cool character name. All right, oh, I can build a story around that
Right,
character
and
name
then
because I got the
it
character
can
name.
like we talked about it before, serendipity. It's spontaneous. Like, I'll draw the character and I'll start looking. I'm like, yo, maybe he does this, maybe he does, and then it'll start to blossom off of that. Or it
Mm,
could be the other way around. Like I could be like, yo, you know, I wonder what this planet looks like or whatever. What this civilization would be like. What would the people look like on that? What would this
mm.
character, this leader of this tribe look like? And I would start, and then it's the other way around. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's never the same for me. It just
Yeah, I
that's not
mentioned.
creativity.
Yeah, no, I got you. I mentioned like when I introduced you, I mentioned your children's book, Little
Right.
Steve's Closet. For that particular story, what came first there?
For that particular story, see, that's a story within a story. I'll tell you the whole story behind that, which you probably know, but you might have forgotten. But I'll refresh your memory. That was actually an assignment. I went to an arts high school, so that was an assignment in Mister what was his name, Mister Mullins English Comp two class. I can't remember.
Mm,
It was a writing class. I think it was English Comp. He assigned us because I went to an arts high school, so there were different majors. There were writers, there were dancers, musicians, artists. So we had a whole bunch of those in the classroom. So he gave the assignment to create your own, tell your own story in your own way, whatever your talent was. You know what I mean? So I'm an artist. So obviously I'm
Oh,
gonna draw. So they had team ups. They had people who would be a writer, one would be an artist. I always did both. So I wrote my own thing and drew my own thing. And the idea came to me just I can't even tell you what came first, but it was an assignment. So I knew I had to
mm.
get something done. I had to come up with something. So I can't remember if I came up with the character or the story first, but that's the origin of that story. And then when I translated it years later after becoming a father, by the time you met me, the character was based off my son. So
Oh,
in
okay.
that sense, if we take
Okay.
it there, the character came from my
Interesting.
son, and I basically took the old story, rehashed it, and modernized it, and put my
Interesting.
current situation and my son in modern time into the story. So from that sense, in that way, the character came first, and then I
See,
always loved drawing that kind of stuff, and that all came
yeah.
with it, you know?
Yeah, because it's funny because I always thought, and you're right, I had forgotten that it was
Yeah,
an assignment
yeah, it
because
was an assignment.
I always thought that you already had
Yeah,
your son by the time
I'll,
you wrote the story, and he
right,
was kind of like
man.
what sparked that. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all
If
right.
you if I'll show it to you, there's a picture on Facebook that one of my high school classmates posted of me holding the original. It wasn't even called Little Steve. Little Steve is called Little Steve because Steve is the name of my son. I forget the name of the kid's name. Something with an S, maybe like Little Stan or something's closet. Whatever the kid's name. And this is the funny part. He was white.
Oh yeah.
White boy.
Okay.
No disrespect to the white people. I'm just saying he wasn't Latino. I made him more ethnic, obviously, when I
Yeah.
recreated. But it was a little blonde, blue-eyed kid, and that's what he was when I first created the book. And
Interesting.
yeah, there's a picture on Facebook about it, so it's
Yeah,
funny.
that's funny, man.
Yeah,
And for those who don't know, Little Steve's Closet is a story of a little boy who doesn't want to clean his room
right.
and goes into his closet and discovers a whole world of dinosaurs. And it's a very magical kind of thing. And it's funny because I know you, so you're into dinosaurs and
I
King
love
Kong
drawing stuff. Yeah.
and
Whenever I'm doing
Godzilla.
something for myself, I'm gonna give myself cool stuff to draw that I
Right,
like. Boom.
right.
You know what
So
I mean?
you wanted to draw the dinosaurs and
Yeah.
stuff. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So in that case, I guess, like you said, it
For
does the
that to
character
answer the short
credit.
answer, the character came first, and
Right,
the second edition, the second rendition
right.
of it. Yeah.
And now listen, I know the answer to this next question, but I'll ask it to you anyway because I think people, and I was one of those people. So I'll ask you this: do you ever work on multiple projects at a time? And if you do, how do you keep them straight? You're laughing because I was one of those guys like, no, Anibal, one at a time.
Yeah.
I can't do two. And now I have like 4 or 5 things that I'm working at the same time.
It's man, it goes back down to that same thing. The creativity, man. When you're a
Yes.
creative person, okay, you're working on a project, right? You're all into it, but even if you have all your ducks lined up, whatever you plotted everything, you may hit a bump. You may hit a roadblock,
Yeah,
a
it
brick
happens.
wall where you just stumped and you just don't know where to take it. You look at your note, you just don't. You stop, but you still have that creative energy inside of you. You got to let it out on something, right? What my version of that is I work on other stuff. I put all that and then while I'm doing something else, the answer to the other problem I'm having might come to me. So at the same time, it may seem like nothing's getting done, but when all the dust settles and I look back, man, I just did all that. I don't
Right.
know how, I can't explain it, but it gets done.
Right.
And again, that's everybody's different. Maybe some people are more disciplined, if that's the word. I don't even want to use that as a word, but maybe they're more anal retentive. They have to finish this one project before jumping on. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the case with them. But to me, that defeat once it gets like that to me, it becomes more work than creativity. And I can't function that way. I need to create. I need to be working that way. That's the only
H-
way I can do it.
How do you keep them straight?
Keeping them straight, that can be a little bit of a problem.
Yeah.
The problem with keeping them straight sometimes is if you go too long in between looking at it. So every now and then, periodically, even when I'm working on something and it's fresh and new and I'm still excited about it, I need to peek in and look at it and refresh and I might tweak it on my phone or whatever device I'm on.
Sure,
I
sure.
might add a line, and every now and then I have to keep doing that. That's the only way for me to keep it straight. The longer I wait in between, the less I'm able to keep it straight. You know what I'm saying? If a thought comes to me about it while I'm doing, I got to get that down right away. Otherwise,
Mhm.
it'll just a fleeting thought. So to me, that's how I do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Again,
How about yourself, man?
I,
Yeah.
I was,
Now
I
that I've
was,
converted you, I've converted you, right?
yeah, yeah. I was of the mindset of let me work on one thing at a time, right?
Right.
But here's the thing about being a writer and just no, I say just, but writing is all I do. I don't draw, right? So
You
when it
used
comes
to.
to that, I did, and
Folks
I
like you to
still
know
do.
that.
and I still do. I still dabble. I still
Yeah,
create.
he does, folks.
I
He's
still
lying.
design. Yeah, I still design
It's
my own
just not your
characters.
priority. It's not your
Right.
focus. I understand. Yeah,
Right. So what happens is, as a writer, you feel like sometimes you feel like I'm done writing this. Now what? Right. And that's where I was. Like I had finished writing something.
right.
Now what? So I got ideas. So I start writing other things. And then I got another idea. And that's not finished yet. But I had this idea in my head. Let me put it down before I forget it. And
Right.
that's how we kind of started, because then I just started writing things down for stories that I may do later on. But I started building, putting down notes, whether it's,
Yeah, man.
like you said, names, I
Whatever.
bought points, idea, like little things. I just start throwing them in, and I have a bunch of these little
Yeah,
just notebooks, you know what I mean? And I just throw
yeah,
all that stuff in. And you're right, the phone, on your notes on the
yeah,
phone, I'm writing stuff down all the time
yeah.
because, like you said, we're creative,
You're
and
a
we
creative
have
person,
to
man.
let it out. And if you don't, you're like, ugh,
Yeah.
you don't know what to do with yourself.
That energy, you
So
definitely gotta express that, man.
so will they ever get done? I hope so, but it was a way to release my creative
Hey, look,
stress in a
I'll
way.
say this. Historically speaking, if you look back and do your research on a lot of famous creators, painters and stuff, you go
Mhm.
to visit their studio. These guys are long dead. There's a lot more unfinished work
Yeah,
than there is finished. You go to their studio, Michelangelo, all these guys, they had tons of because they were creatives. They needed to constantly be creating. They created until things got done, and whatever wasn't done, at least they created.
yeah,
And that's just the way it is, man. So you need to pick and choose which ones you think are worth finishing. That at the end, you got them started. Now, which ones you really feel that connection to? You know what I mean? The point is, you're always creating. You know,
yeah, yeah. No, no, it's
ABC,
true.
always be creating.
Always be creating, not just closing. Nah, you're
Not
right, man.
just
It and that's how and that's what happens when you we become obsessed with creating and putting things out there. It just happens. You know what I mean? I don't think there's anything wrong with
It's
it.
a
It just
lifestyle.
yeah,
now that's what I consider. It's not even
yeah,
a part-time. It's just the way my life is now. It's
yeah,
become part of who I am, and I think you can agree with that. And a lot of guys that have been doing it for a long time can agree to that.
yeah,
It's who
yeah,
you are
yeah,
now. You are, your outside job, whatever. If you have that, that's what you do during the day. But
yeah.
what you are, when people ask you, what do you do? What do you are? This is my answer to it. I'm a
I
creator.
know,
I draw comics mostly, is what I say.
I
I'm
know.
a freelance artist. That's my answer to that question. Whenever I
True.
meet somebody at a cocktail party or small talk somewhere, that's my answer to that.
You know what's funny? People always ask me, "Don't you ever get bored?" I don't get bored. Why? Like, why don't you, like, how people be saying, like, I'm so bored. Like, I'm never bored, bro.
I'm never bored. Yeah.
I'm never
I
bored.
I
Like,
put up somewhere, or I read somewhere, claiming that is an insult to oneself, basically. You say
mm,
if you're bored with yourself. You're
right, you're
insulting
boring.
yourself, bitch. I'm never bored.
I'm
I'm
never
never
bored,
bored,
bro,
bro.
because
Never.
there's always something to do. If I'm not doing this,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and write my next thing. If I'm not
Not
doing
even
that,
that.
I'm gonna
E
letter something.
Even
If
if
I'm,
I'm
you know what I
just not
mean?
doing anything, I'm thinking about something.
That's
So I could just
true.
be sitting
That is
still in a
true.
room just thinking and contemplating. I'm not bored.
No,
It might
no,
look boring to somebody walking in on me, just sitting,
right.
watching me sit there like that, just not even. I'm
You
thinking, I'm contemplating. I'm not bored.
Right. It's funny because as a writer, people always say, as a writer, you should always read. You should always be reading. You should
Yeah,
always be doing
yeah,
that,
yeah.
right?
Right.
I like to read. I do. I enjoy myself a good book. It's hard for me to sit down and read somebody else's work because sometimes I think I could be writing something while I'm reading this, which is
Right.
interesting as hell, and I should be
I know what
reading.
you mean.
I
Yeah,
can be writing something, or I could be doing something.
yeah.
Why am I wasting my time?
Right. I know.
To me, it's almost like, and it's sacrilegious to say that as a writer, right? Oh my God, what do you mean you're
Right.
wasting your time
Right.
reading? But it's like I can be writing, bro.
Yeah.
Like I could be
I,
writing something.
I look at it like also like um as long as you're informed about what it is you
Yes.
do and you know the ins and outs of how it gets done and how it's
Hmm.
manufactured and the
Yeah.
process and all that, I think for the most part, especially with what we do in comics, you could kind of get away with not necessarily being a full-time heavy reader, in my opinion. I think I've gotten by okay. I can't go toe to toe with somebody who's like a novel reader, but that's not my area of interest anyway. But
Right.
it does help you to know exactly how the ins and outs works
Yeah.
of what you're doing.
Yeah. I read for research now.
I do
Like
too.
like
Yeah,
like if
yeah,
I have a
yeah,
story in mind and
yeah.
I want to add certain things to
Yeah,
it, I'm reading for research. I'm
I love
researching for it.
bios, man. Like I love reading like people's come up stories is a real interest to me, and just things that are facts and things that I could use
Yeah.
in like practical everyday life type of
Yeah.
stuff. You know what I mean?
I like biopics. Like I like Killing
That's cool.
Pablo, that book
Yeah,
by Pablo Escobar, like that
yeah.
book about
Oh
Pablo.
yeah, I
Like
can
I
imagine.
like reading about stuff like that, like
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
historical fiction in a
Yeah,
way. Sometimes
yeah,
I enjoy reading that kind of stuff.
absolutely.
And I love the classics. Like I love the old classic, like
Right.
literature and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
you
But
got me there. I can't really get into a lot of that stuff. I tried and unless I have to read it, I probably won't read it. You know, like
yeah,
the
and sometimes though, sometimes I kind of try to stay away from like too much reading because I almost feel like I don't want that stuff to infiltrate my
yeah,
creativity.
yeah.
And
I
now I'm
know.
just copying
Right.
somewhere else because I
Yeah,
saw it, and now I'm just gonna because growing up in the 80s and
yeah,
90s for me, watching all those cartoons, a lot of that stuff is still in here. So a lot of
absolutely.
that stuff kind of sometimes seeps out into my own
You don't
writing
even
because that's what I
realize
remember
it.
seeing it, and I don't
Yeah,
even realize it. So
yeah.
I try to kind of like curb that a little bit because when I see that I'm doing it, I'm like, oh wait, no, 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 that's
Yeah,
what I'm doing.
right,
And you could say it's an homage, and people have done that,
right.
odes to old
Yeah.
stuff like that, and you could do it that way. But I try to stay away from that. I try to stay
I
away
I
from that as much as
remember,
possible.
in high school again, my, I guess my first mentor, my official mentor who passed away, like, what was it, last year or whatever it was, um, one of the first things that I can clearly remember him saying when I told him I draw comics and I'm trying to do he said, "Try not to read too many comics as you're
Mm,
working for that exact same reason.
mhm,
You want your own creativity to come through. You don't wanna be influenced by what's
yeah,
being done." You know what I mean? That's gonna kinda,
mhm,
dilute what you're doing, you know what I mean? So, that
yeah,
kinda stuck with me too, you know?
yeah.
I definitely do that myself.
No, I agree, man. I agree. I know that at the beginning of the interview, you mentioned, one of the first questions was obviously your process, and you said it's different when you're working with somebody else. It's
Yeah,
different when you're than what you want to do. But I just wanted to bring it back to that, to the collaboration, because that's something that in the indie world or in the indie community, indie publishing, we tend to collab
yeah.
with people, right? And so the question becomes, is it possible to collaborate with another indie writer, artist, creator? If so, how do you make it work? And if not, why not?
Well, I'm all about collaborations, man. I'm always trying to reach out to people and collaborate. For me, like if I feel like I feel the person out, I feel like we got a good connection. It could potentially lead to a collaboration. I'm gonna jump on that. I'm gonna suggest that. I'm like, hey, we should do this. Let's work on this together, type of thing. I think a lot of the times, for some people, maybe you get caught up in the love of the project and you kind of neglect some of the red flags with that other personality that you're getting in bed with, quote unquote. And that's where problems arise. Like you may not have picked up on certain signals that are always there, man. I believe in that. You just ignore them or you're in denial or whatever. You don't see them, but the signals are there from the very beginning. You get these vibes from people. And if you ignore that, sometimes like the egos or whatever other outside influences get in there and dirty up what you're trying to do. And the purity of the creation is gone and it just falls apart. And
Mm,
it's hard to predict that sometimes, you know what I mean? But for the most part, I consider myself a pretty good people reader.
yeah.
I'm an observant person. I pick up on these vibes and stuff, and for the most part, again, like I would say like 90% of the collaborations that I've done, that I've worked on, that have been, in my opinion, in my eyes, successful ones that have led to more than just a work relationship with the people I worked on it. We become friends, after the project. So it's not always the case. I've, lost a few here and there,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
like I said, the majority of it has worked out for me. That's the best answer I could give for that.
How do you make it work? Like,
I
or do you even try? Like, are there things that you just can't, you just can't do it?
I mean, with some people, it's again, it's like the personality traits, really, because if you're the type of person that you need to have things your way and it's your way or the highway, I suggest you work alone. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's just
Yeah.
it's not going to work for you in that environment because as creators, we're all going to want to put our ideas on the page somehow, some way. If you can't handle that, if your ego just won't allow that, don't even get involved with it. So
Mm,
you need to know like the people that you're working with, and to handle it. If like if I'm working with someone else on their project, I'm not working for them. I'm working with them. So my ideas and my stuff is secondary to what they want to do because I look at them as the one in charge of the project. So if they, if I debate on something, go back and forth, I lay it on the table, I let them decide. I'm not gonna force my opinion or say I'm not working on this anymore if you don't do it my way. That that's not going to happen. That's
Right.
the way I look at it. I'm kind of working under you in a sense when it's your project.
Now, when you're saying, okay, so when we use the word working, or when you're using
Yeah.
the word working, right?
Right.
Does that automatically mean you're getting paid for it, or when you use the word working, it's just almost like we're putting something together? Because
Yeah.
and the reason I ask you that is
Yeah.
because sometimes I think that if it's a paying gig, it's no
Right.
longer a collaboration. I mean, I guess it could be a collaboration, but you're still getting paid. And so, what you have to say in regards to the project, like you said, comes second because A, I'm getting paid. B, you're the creator of the
Yeah.
project. So now I'm working. Is
Right.
that really a collaboration then? I
See,
guess.
but
I don't know.
again, it's like your rapport with the person and a partnership. Sometimes
Right.
you build where it starts off where like employee employer, but
Right.
as the project develops, you start getting more comfortable with each other, start
Right.
trusting each other, and it's happened with me. They start giving more
The
acceptance
reams,
to
they
your
start letting,
ideas
yeah,
to what you
yeah,
want
yeah,
to do, and it becomes a unified collaboration where it's not they're dictating to you what to do. And
yeah,
again, for me, I've discovered my personality doesn't really work well under those conditions. So
right,
I if I see it's gonna start turning into a straight up dictatorship, I will probably politely exit from
right,
the quote unquote
yeah,
collaboration because
yeah,
I know myself enough to know it's not
yeah.
gonna work for me that way.
Yeah, no, I got you. I think that part of it too is you building trust, right? And once they
Absolutely,
feel like they trust you, they feel like, oh,
yeah,
this guy knows what he's doing. I can
absolutely,
let him rock. I can just let him
right,
do his thing
absolutely,
because he
yeah,
knows what he's doing. So
absolutely.
a lot of that too is just building trust with the person that you're
Absolutely,
with.
yeah.
And
That should be an important part of
yeah,
the creative process. All of that should happen spontaneously.
hmm,
You don't look
hmm,
for it, but it just happens, and you're
yeah,
like, "Oh man, I'm loving this project even more now. Now I can get to do
right,
this. Now
right,
we're much more into it now because we're both
yeah,
on that same creative level."
yeah. And
Right.
I think part of it too is respect. You have to respect the person you're working with.
Oh yeah.
If there is no respect for what you're doing, that person's never going to look at you
Right.
as quote unquote as equal or
Right.
whatever, and
Yeah.
they're never going to let you kind of do your thing
Right.
because there's that there people have that power thing, right? It's my
Yeah.
book.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
do it however I want to
Yeah.
do it.
Right.
When the writing's on the wall and you're saying, dude, this doesn't work. Like, let's try it this way. But that
Gotcha.
person just
Yeah.
refuses to believe. And I think part of that is just there's a level of respect
Oh
that
yeah.
has to come,
Yeah.
with letting you do your own thing. But
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
yeah, I mean, listen, I love collaborating. Like,
Yeah.
I
Same
think
here.
it's almost like going to the gym with a buddy, right? Like they
Right.
just keep you going. They
Right.
keep you going. And
Mhm.
if you're constantly have to do this thing by yourself, sometimes you're probably just gonna give up. You know what I mean? Like you're just gonna
You're
stop
not
doing
gonna
it.
feel like going. You're not gonna feel like living.
Right, right. And I feel for you, for example, like, do you, because you do a lot of your own writing, do you ever feel like you need a writer or no?
Oh yeah, there's ideas that like I have the gist of the story that I know I'm gonna be looking for a writer to do it. Like I got people in mind. I'm like, I would love to draw something written by this guy, and I got the idea
Right.
to pitch to him to hopefully get him to write it
Gotcha.
for me. That I yeah, there's a few ideas that I have like that
Yeah.
for for several reasons. Time being a
Time is
factor
one.
is and it's just excruciating when you do both. You know what I mean? And
Mhm,
with so many
mhm.
different ideas, they're definite. And the other way around too. Like I have ideas where I know I'm just gonna be writing, and I'm gonna be looking for an artist to draw it for me.
Right,
So yeah,
right.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, I think that time is such a
time,
big thing,
bro.
dude.
Time. Yeah,
Time is such a big thing because yeah, like you said, you could do it yourself.
yeah.
How long is that going to take you to do? It's just there's only so much you can do
Man.
by yourself. Like it's just you're right. And I think
Yeah,
time is a big issue when it
yeah,
comes to creating comics and stuff like that. All right. Well, listen, Anibal, we're down to the final bonus question
Oh,
here. The
oh.
bonus question is, what's your favorite YouTube channel, and why is it Get Your Meds?
That's a good one, man. That's a good one. I gotta say, I love the concept behind this, and I saw it coming. I was like, I recognize the potential from the onset of your on camera appearances. Doing the podcast, and I said this is definitely a good move, and yeah, this is uh a very good way to connect with the people you're trying to connect
Yeah,
with. And
yeah.
you're already well connected yourself, so I can only, broaden my connections. So that's a good thing, you know what I mean? But yeah, seriously,
Yeah, no,
it's a good
dude.
format, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
no,
good
I
format.
appreciate that. Yeah, man. You know what it is? We all like talking shop, bro. Like
Of
whether we
course.
want to admit it or not,
Of
we all
course.
like to talk
Yeah.
about, the creative process. I think it's just this one is just a little more, you know, it's more towards writing.
Yeah.
But we talk about creating, and the
Right.
process of
Absolutely.
storytelling goes beyond just I'm a writer, I'm an artist. You know
And
what I
and
mean?
within our field, what we do, they're intertwined, man.
Yeah,
Comics
yeah,
and writing and
yeah,
writing, it's just kind of it's very intertwined.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
for
the
sure.
way it is. Either you do one or the other, but they do intertwine. And when you
Yeah.
talk about one, you can't help but not talk about the other one.
Yeah, no, absolutely, dude. Absolutely. All right. So one final thing, Aniba, that I have for you and everybody watching, you guys can jump in on this. I like to leave you with a writing prompt. Every show ends with a writing prompt. I created a specific prompt for you. I'm going to
Okay.
give you the prompt now. You're not going to write it now, but when you have some time, if you're on vacation or if you're doing whatever it is you're doing, and you're like, I got some time, 15 minutes or so. If you want to write it or if you want to draw a scene or something like that, do it. And then if you're happy with it, you're like, yo, I kind of like this. Send it over to me. I'll put it on my website, and then we'll rock out like that. All right. So I'm going to give you the prompt. The prompt is a train is approaching a station. That's it. A
Huh,
train is approaching a station.
okay.
You decide who's on that train,
Okay.
why is that train coming to the station, where is it going, where did it come from? But a train is approaching the station.
It,
That
it,
is the writing prompt.
it's funny, like we were saying before, the influences of what we see, and it just, man, I'm already, I saw. Can I tell you the scene I'm already seeing? Like,
Sure.
I even know the angle. Like, it's crazy, bro.
Damn, that was quick.
Yo, it's crazy. But I don't know if I'm pulling it from something I've seen. I'm pretty sure I
Right,
probably have seen this somewhere, but like,
right, right.
I'm gonna tell you, yeah.
Yeah, go for
Right.
it.
It's a train pulling up, and it's worm's eye view, and the scene is black and white, and it's on a pair of shiny high heels with a long trench coat, and the train is pulling up. We don't see it. Obviously, it's a woman, but the train is pulling up from that angle. That's the first shot, and
Interesting.
it's a woman waiting for her returning man to get off the train, and
Wow.
that's the setup.
Right. See, that's what I'm
It
saying, man.
drew me
It's
in. Like, as soon as you said a train, I saw that shit. I'm like, did I see that in a movie? Am I Where did the image come from? How come I took
right.
my head off
How
those
does that
words?
happen, right?
Yeah,
But see,
just
this is the thing about when you're a writer, when you're an artist, you see the world through pictures,
yeah. Oh,
photos, right?
yeah.
Whereas, like,
Right.
I could see that, but I automatically go to let me write that. Let me write the
Gotcha.
description.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas your mind went to let me draw that right now. Like I can draw that right. I can know exactly what it looks like. You even had the angle at
yeah,
which it was coming up. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like
yeah. I'm like,
it's
did I
kind of funny,
it's
man.
just it's crazy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
All right, cool, brother. Well, yeah, no, well, this is it, man. Thank you so much for coming on, Anibal. If you guys want to know more about what Anibal's working on right now, go to the show notes. Everything will be in there. Description of what he's doing, his website, his social handles, all that stuff is on there. So check it out. But thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right, brother.
Yeah, man. Good time.
And there you have it, folks. That was Mr. Anibal Arroyo. And that was our topic, indie collaborations. What do you guys think? If you've done this before, if you're an indie, you're watching right now, have you done collaborations with other indies? How did that go? Was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience? Throw it down in the comment below. Do you agree with some of the things we were talking about on the show? Throw it down in the comments below. We like to hear from you. Plus, if you want to get down with the get down and you want to do the writing prompt, the train is approaching a station, then by all means, make sure you send me an email with what you've written. And if you're okay with me, putting it on my website, I will put it up there for all to read your wonderful work. Remember, that's just 15 minutes, nothing crazy. I don't want you to go through editing and all that. Just raw, nice, boom, 15-minute writing prompt, nothing crazy. If you want to do it, do it. Also, don't forget to check out the show notes for everything that Anibal is working on and where to get his books, where to get more information about him. It'll all be down there. Also, don't forget to go to getyourmeds.com if you want to support the channel, not just subscribe and share it and do all that fun stuff, which you should be doing. But also, I have some merch on the store on getyourmeds.com that will help support the cause. So do your thing. Next week, I will have another writer. Surprise, surprise. Mr. JD Calderon will be on the show next week. So tune in for that. And yeah, I'm going to leave you with this as I always do, guys. Keep writing. All right. Peace.